Hey there folks! Welcome back to SlavesNet, where we share stories about companies that made us feel like slaves rather than human beings with rights. Today I've got a tale for you about an interview that started off amazing and then took a wild turn. Grab some popcorn because this one's a roller coaster. So, back in 2019 I was interviewing for a QA engineer position at a company that shall remain nameless. Let's call the Mystery Corp to avoid any lawsuits. The job involved database testing, a bit of Selenium, and some manual testing. Sounds pretty standard, right? Well, buckle up because here's what went down. I walk into the first interview with a technical recruiter. Let's call him Bob. Bob was this super nice guy, the kind you want to have a beer with after work. Bob, hey, welcome, thanks for coming in. Let's start with a few technical questions. Can you tell me about your experience with database testing? Interviewee, sure, I've worked extensively with SQL and have done a lot of testing on various databases. Bob, great. Now let's move on to some HR questions. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Interviewee, my strength is my attention to detail, and my weakness? Probably that I care too much about getting things right. The interview went great and Bob was a blast to talk to. I walked out of there feeling on top of the world. Scene transition interview 2. Next up was the second interview with the tech team leader. Let's call her Jane. Jane was a lovely lady, super sharp and clearly knew her stuff. Jane, hi there. Let's dive into some SQL queries, shall we? Can you write a query to find the second highest salary in a table? Interviewee, sure thing, here's the query. I nailed it. Jane seemed really impressed. Jane, wow, that's perfect. You're really good at this. I think you'd be a great fit for our team. I left the second interview feeling even more confident. 2 for 2. What could go wrong, right? Scene transition interview 3. And then came the final interview with the CEO and CTO. Let's call them Mr. Boss and Mr. Tech. This is where things got interesting. Mr. Boss, hello, thanks for coming in. We work a lot with banks and government agencies, so we need someone reliable. Are you ready for some technical QA questions? Interviewee, absolutely, fire away. They asked me a ton of questions. Automation, database, manual testing, you name it, I drilled through them all, but then came the curveball. Mr. Boss, do you have any questions for us? Interviewee, yes, I'd love to know more about the company culture and work-life balance. Mr. Boss, well, we work a lot of urgent stuff. Are you willing to work extra hours? And here's where it got tricky. I took a deep breath and replied, Interviewee, are you willing to pay me for those extra hours, Mr. Boss? We don't have overtime for extra hours. Interviewee, well, I don't work for free. Mr. Boss tried to be a gentleman and continue the interview, but Mr. Tech jumped in. Mr. Tech, again, tell me why it's a problem for you to work extra hours. Interviewee, the time after work is for my family and friends. To actually convince them that I'm working, I need proof, like some extra cash. And that was it. Mr. Tech ended the interview and reached out his hand to shake mine. I ignored it, said goodbye, and walked out. So there you have it, folks. That's the story of how I almost got a job at Mystery Corp. Remember, always know your worth and don't be afraid to stand up for it. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe to SlavesNet, and share your own interview horror stories in the comments below. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.